والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed, we're still on Ubudiyyah. We're still going through this book, Ubudiyyah, studying the book of servitude or being a true slave of Allah or slavery, authored by Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, translated by Nasiruddin al-Khattab. There are two different publications, one by Taha Publishers and the other one is by Al-Hidayah Publications. And according to this publication, which was Taha Publishers, we're on page 74. Last time we spoke about if you love Allah, you must follow His Messenger. And this includes if you love Allah, you must also love His Messenger. And we talked about extremism in the Messenger's love. So this time, inshallah, we will, the next title is under Jihad. And this Jihad here is addressed in the general sense of the word Jihad. When Jihad is mentioned, it is either in a specific sense or specific implication, which is the fighting in the cause of Allah, to make the word of Allah supreme. And jihad also could be mentioned in the general sense of what the word means, which is exertion. Basically to put effort into something, which is juhd. Juhd is effort. It comes from jahada, which is made effort or put effort. So jihad, it means to put effort, putting effort into something, which or exertion. In this case, the meaning that is being implied here is the general one, which is exertion. So the author rahimahullah said jihad means to do one's utmost. Jihad means to do one's utmost. I was worried about you. Jihad means to do one's utmost, to do all that one possibly can, to do that which Allah loves and to repel that which Allah hates. If a slave fails to do anything he is capable of in jihad, this is indicative of some weakness of him or imperfection in his love for Allah and His Messenger. Okay, so it is basically utmost exertion. It is utmost effort. It's your ultimate effort. And like there is sacrifice and there is ultimate sacrifice here, what is ultimate sacrifice here? It's to die while defending your country here in the U.S., in the West. In general sense, the ultimate sacrifice refers to dying while defending your country. So the concept is not really very peculiar or anything. It's a very common concept, very accepted by all people in all times and all places, that the ultimate sacrifice is martyrdom. It is to sort of sacrifice your own soul, your own life. That's the ultimate sacrifice. But that's not only what jihad means, because jihad means exertion, to put your ultimate effort. Jihad means to tolerate hardship in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says here, if a slave fails to do anything he is capable of in jihad, this is indicative of some weakness or imperfection in his love for Allah and His Messenger. Would this apply to, failing to wake up for Salat al-Fajr, for instance? It does. Yeah. So if does jihad apply to the effort that you put into waking yourself up for Salat al-Fajr and making wudu with cold water? If you have to make wudu with cold water. We were quite used to those examples from back home. And, it doesn't mean that back home there is no hot water, but, a lot of people still make wudu with cold water. Anyway, But even though there is warm water here, you find less people in the masajid than back home. So it does. That is a test. That is a test of your effort. How much effort are you willing to put into your religious commitment, your commitment towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How much driving force you have. The driving force. The greater the driving force, which is the iman in your heart, the greater distance you will cover, the farther you will go, and the greater heights you will aspire for and you will reach, if the driving force is greater in your heart. And that driving force is dependent on your iman, is dependent on your faith. And that faith comes in different grades and different layers. And those who fail, they have the lower types of faith. And there are types of faith. There is faith through association. There is faith through persuasion. There is faith through spiritual realization, which is the highest. Most of the people are hanging somewhere between faith through association and persuasion. So as kids, they have faith through association. They associate with this community, so they belong to this community, so this community is Muslim, so they are Muslim, just by the mere fact of belonging to that community, or by virtue of being from that fraternity of Muslims. So that is faith through association. That is the weakest, the most feeble faith. If it is completely faith through association, you can't go through adulthood with this. So people have to really grow up and start to really develop some degree of conviction. And because if they continue to just to be Muslims just for the mere purpose of belonging to that fraternity, then they'll continue to be at an edge, and they will very likely fall off the cliff and be destroyed. So the angels would come to you in your grave and ask you who was your Lord, and then if you really did not have true faith, you'll say, I don't know, or I heard the people say something and I said it. And that will be the greatest loss. So faith through association is the childish form, and people cannot really go through adulthood holding on to this. If they do, then they will be like the people that you really know. The people that most of us know, that you wonder, why is he Muslim? What makes him Muslim? How could that be Muslim? And you see him completely lacking any form of spirituality, of piety, of righteousness, of anything. He's just holding on to, a straw, and he may very soon lose it. So people need to develop that mental conviction, to make that intellectual decision. That yes, it really is true. Islam is really supreme. That is the right religion to hold on to. That's the right religion to uphold. A lot of Muslims, by the way, think that, it's one of the religions, one of the nice, cute religions. Why shouldn't I stay here? Why go out and get lost? And I'm here. It's a good religion. It's a nice religion after all. But they don't really believe that it is the religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept and accept none but it. So they're just hanging in there and enjoying the ride with the rest of their fellow Muslims. And so once you go through this stage and you get to the next stage, which is faith through persuasion, and you really have a mental conviction, and you have, and certainly there are different grades within each category, within each layer. There are different grades, and there are people who are, at the sort of the border between association and persuasion and spiritual realization. So it's different grades. So once you've made it into a mental conviction, mental conviction, an intellectual decision, and now you can say to yourself why you are Muslim. You can say to yourself why you're not pagan, why you're not atheist. First of all, why you're not atheist, and then why you are not pagan, or why are you not a believer in some Eastern philosophy? Why are you not, brother? This is for sisters, brother.
I know, I say sisters.
Huh?
I just because we have a wedding tomorrow, I want to check the place and.
Oh.
There shows that's it. There are sisters. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
So, the faith through persuasion. So you get a mental. You go through this, but is this enough? Is this the end of it? No, it really isn't. Then there is the next step, which is faith through spiritual realization. And a lot of people are stuck in the second stage, and they're happily stuck in the second stage because they think, I'm quite sure, yeah, man, this is really good stuff here. Islam is right. I'm quite sure. I can convince you. I can persuade you. But he is lost. He's lost because he doesn't know that this is not it. This is not the end of the journey. This is not the end of the story. There is the connection now. There is the spiritual connection, spiritual realization. It is the moist type of faith. This is so far the dry type of faith. So far, that is dry. Whether it's association, whether it's mental conviction, persuasion, etc., it is still dry. It has not become moist yet. It has not become green yet. It will not come to fruition yet. It will not bring about tranquility to your heart yet. It will not bring about happiness and joy to you yet. It will not bring about wholesomeness, holiness, holism to you yet. It is still dry, and you have not really reached your goal, or what should be your goal yet. So it is not enough to be convinced until you find the joy and happiness, you find the sweetness of faith, you find the green faith that, that comes to fruition, that gives you the fruits of faith, and of tranquility, serenity, certainty, happiness, joy, which is inside the heart. It does not have to manifest in joking and, laughing and stuff. Because a lot of wicked people do that all the time. And they try to mask the weakness of their spirituality. So how do you get there? How do you move from conviction, mental realization, or mental conviction, to spiritual realization, where you are actually connected, which is what people call al-wusul, which is reaching, attainment. Well, certainly one of those things is to continue to ask Allah, to continue to humble yourself before Him, to continue to depend on Him for, helping you or on helping you to get closer to Him. So you're completely reliant on Him to bring you closer to Him. Because you alone, through your exercise, through your intelligence, through your ibadah, will not be able to make it, will not be able to draw closer to Him unless He invites you, unless He brings you closer to Him. So that complete humility before Him to bring you closer to Him. So whenever He guides you to doing some good act or, to worship Him in some way, then you become more and more humble and you become more thankful. And that is why the righteous predecessors used to say, how could we thank Him enough if thanking Him requires thanking Him? So if, because when you thank Him, He guided you to thank Him. So you should thank Him for guiding you to thank Him. So how could you thank Him enough? So it is basically the sense of humility, the sense of humbleness. I can't make it on my own. And so please bring me closer to you. So that is one thing. The other thing is certainly the acts of worship are prescribed for this purpose, for this cause, to bring you closer. Aren't they all prescribed to bring you closer to Allah, to make you more observant of Him, more watchful of His injunctions, of His instructions? Therefore, if you're more observant, you're closer to Him. Because if you're always thinking about, how to please Him and how to, avoid His anger, then you will get closer to Him. Because you are always thinking of Him. So now we said that you should rely on Him and you should ask Him and you should commit to His worship, particularly the acts of worship that foster devotion, which are the acts that are done in secret, the acts that are done that are not accompanied by so much praise from people and so on. So basically, that driving force, the connection with Allah, the spiritual realization, to be connected spiritually, it will give you the ultimate driving force. And certainly within that layer, there are layers. But this is where you want to be. You should not get stuck at the level of persuasion or mental recognition or dry conviction. You sit down with an atheist and you can defeat him. You sit down with Christian or Jew and you can defeat them, for instance, and you can prove to them, yes, that Islam is supreme. But then you're quite convinced of it, and it's right here all the time. Islam is supreme. But you did not develop a connection with the Lord of Islam, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the one who revealed it to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Therefore, this mental conviction, and a lot of people have this mental conviction, and you find them so behind on their spirituality, so behind on their commitment, so behind on their righteousness, on their religiosity. Some of them could be even wicked. And they do have the mental conviction, but they are just happily stuck there in this stage, and they did not really develop spiritually at all. It is known that usually one cannot achieve what one loves except by putting up with hardship, whether the object of one's love is worthy of or otherwise. Those who love wealth, power, and images do not attain them except by suffering some damage or harm in worldly terms, as well as the harm that will befall them in the hereafter. If a person who claims to love Allah and His Messenger is unable to put up with hardship, which even wise people who do not love Allah realize they must put up with in order to achieve their goals, this indicates some weakness or imperfection in his love for Allah. Because basically, only lowly people who are worthless, who have the sort of the lowest of the low, are the people who will not put effort into anything, will not tolerate any form of hardship. They just want to be there, whatever it is that they can scavenge on, they would. It is like scavengers that would not actually seek a prey, but they would wait until the lion finishes eating, and then they would scavenge on the rest of the game animal. And there are lots of those people, so they are really not interested in status in this life or the hereafter. It is basically they're not here. But even the people who are interested in status in this life, but not the hereafter, they do understand that some sacrifice has to be, experienced, has to be tolerated, some effort has to be made, sacrifices, and so on. Even in research, people who put some time in research, they go home late, they can suffer from headache, they can suffer from weak vision, they can suffer from even exposure to disease. In the previous times, actually, many of the physicians did go to great lengths in experimenting on themselves to find out about disease and health and sickness and so on. So basically, wise people who have high aspirations, people of higher aspirations, whether it is for this world or the hereafter, they do recognize that you have to put up with some hardship. You have to tolerate some hardship. That hardship, a lot of Muslims refuse to. We have a state of spiritual laziness that is just amazing. So it is really amazing, because the religion that we believe in should make us, sort of buzzed all the time with energy, with positive energy. But we have a degree of spiritual laziness that makes us so behind in all fields, on all ends. We're just behind, worldly behind, in terms of spiritual commitment also. Not necessarily behind other nations regarding spiritual commitment or excellence, but we're so behind where we should be. We're so behind where the Sahaba were, for instance, or the Tabi'in, or the righteous generations. So that state of laziness is indicative of the lack of driving force. He's talking about here, the lack of driving force. That state of laziness is also indicative of the lowly character, because wise people do put effort into, don't you see how they wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to walk their dogs? And we don't wake up to pray. It's not interesting. And then they come back from home, they come back from work and go to the gym to stay in shape. And we may come back and just forget about Salat al-Asr or forget about Salat al-Maghrib and just go to sleep, or, I'll pray tomorrow, inshallah, and stuff. Isn't that amazing how someone will have more commitment towards, his physical fitness than one would have commitment towards his Lord who created them, who sustains them? That someone would have more commitment towards his dog more than... That's just amazing. Do you know that Iblis was punished because he refused to prostrate to Adam? Right? Do you know that, 90% of Muslims refuse to prostrate to Allah? They don't pray. Maybe not 90%. A large number. I can't, my son is laughing because I always tell him, don't throw out numbers like this left and right. You have to be precise. So, It's not 90%. I don't know. But it is really a large percentage of Muslims who do not pray. Except in Ramadan. Yeah, so they're Ramadanis. But anyway, it is quite sad, because if you think about it, Iblis was actually expelled from the mercy of Allah because he refused to prostrate before Adam. It's a sin, yeah, because Allah told them. It's not because of Adam, it's because Allah told them to prostrate. But there are a lot of us who refuse to prostrate to Allah. So you can imagine how wicked that is.
To refuse, or just out of laziness?
Well, the thing is, the bottom line, they refuse. If they reject or not reject, the obligation itself is different. But there is a degree of refusal here, because even if there's laziness, you are not doing it. You're refusing to do it. Whether you reject the obligation itself, that's a different story. But you're still refusing to perform. So all acts of worship do require some commitment, and do require some effort, and do require some putting up with hardship, and do require some sacrifice. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. So if you don't find this in you, if you can't control your wickedness, it is because you have lack of driving force. And then you need to work on this faith, the iman in your heart, because if you do, you will be able to control your wickedness. Because is there any wickedness that's beyond control? No. Otherwise, it would have not been asked of us to avoid it. If it is asked of us to avoid all sorts of wickedness, then they're all within control. Because لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. Allah does not burden any soul beyond its capacity. So it is about the driving force. So, like I said, praying requires faith, spirituality, and emigration requires spirituality. That is one of the highest levels of the, show of faith. And one of the tests is to immigrate from the land where you can worship Allah less to the land where you can worship Allah more, from the land where you can worship Allah with less freedom to the land where you can worship Allah with more freedom, from the land where you can make less positive difference to the life, for the cause of Allah and His deen, to the land where you can make a greater difference or a greater impact for Allah and His cause and His deen. But some people would never give up Coke and Pepsi, although Coke and Pepsi are all over the place now. But it is it's never like the one here, by the way, because it doesn't have that much fizz. and so that would be a great challenge for them to live in some other place, because every time you open a can of Pepsi, it doesn't really have that much fizz. So you feel sort of distressed. For some people. So you can imagine the kind of driving force there is for someone like that, and the many phenomena that would really disturb you, disrupt your peace. So if you're not able to do those things, if you're not able to put that effort, if you're not able to make those sacrifices, so what should you do? you should really examine your faith. You should really try to figure out if you're a true believer or not, because many of us sort of, just keep on, keep on going without enough reflection. Just have very little awareness of our surroundings. We're enjoying the ride. You're sitting next to your, fellow Muslims here on this bus, and you're coming to the masjid. You're even coming to the midweek halaqah. So what more can I do now? I'm praying 5 times a day. I come to the midweek halaqah, or I come to that, and I go to a couple other halaqahs maybe. And so what else can I do? And then when you can't control, your wickedness or certain aspects of wickedness within you, or you can't commit to certain acts of righteousness, you don't go back and say, even though I pray 5 times a day and I fast in Ramadan and I do all of this and I go to a couple of halaqas every week and I'm really practicing here, I need to revisit my faith and see, why is it not green? Why is it not coming to fruition? Why is it incapable? Why has it been defeated by this type of wickedness that I have, or that type of wickedness? But the shaitan would always tell you, you're doing so well, look at all the people around you. And that is why you should never look at the people doomed to destruction. And you should always understand that you'll be asked, by Allah alone. So the people will not be around you then. The people who are around you now will not be around you then. It's all about you and Him, and that's it. And He sent you a messenger who conveyed a message that will be always preserved. And it is not about anyone else. It's just about you and Him and this message that is intact and will remain intact until the day of judgment. And those who strive to live by it will be able to live by it. The end of Surah Al-Ankabut says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And those who strive in our cause, we shall guide them to our path, and most certainly Allah is always with the righteous. So the shaitan, deceives you, tricks you into looking around you and looking at how you are better than others, and then you will fail. You will fail in revisiting your faith, your commitment, and trying to improve it so that you can actually overcome those hurdles, and will sort of keep you away. So don't listen to the shaitan. The bottom line, every test you fail, every hurdle you can't overcome, every sin you commit, every shortcoming you fall into, should make you revisit your faith. And then when you revisit, say to yourself, why is it not enough? Maybe I don't have enough connection. Maybe I have one disease that's acting like a hole in the sack. No matter how much you collect inside, no matter how much you work, there is a hole. The sack will not keep anything. You have a backpack and you're running around collecting gems and jewels and so on and so forth, but it has a big hole. So you put a diamond, ruby. At the end, you have nothing. It's empty because it has a big hole. That hole may be prejudice, may be arrogance. That hole may be, sarcasm, for instance. أن تسخر من أخيك, or to despise your brother. بحسب المرء من الإثم أن يحقر أخاه. It is sufficient sin for a man, to despise his brother. So and some people can't really find sort of fulfillment except in looking down at others, or making fun of others, or making jokes about others. That is where they find their fulfillment. Because that is what? That's self-worship. That's the egoism. That is the satanic disease. Satan said, أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. I am better than him. You created me of fire and you created him of mud. So that satanic disease, if it afflicts our hearts, if we are infected by it, then whatever it is that we are doing is going to waste, because we have a hole. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, بِحَسْبِ الْمَرْءِ مِنَ الْإِثْمِ. It is sufficient. What does sufficient mean here? Sufficient to destroy you. Sufficient to make all of your work in vain. That's enough. You're done. You're ended. So maybe sometimes it is not only that you go back and look at your shortcomings and you try to do more. Maybe sometimes you should look for holes. You should look at what is it that is making what I do not really work, not really help. Yes?
Isn't that sort of like a punishment? Because some people work very hard, do their deeds, do extra and extra and extra. What could be more punishment for them than just do everything like that?
It is more punishment for them to...
You work hard.
Assalamu alaikum. Well, it is okay if we say Assalamu alaikum because he came from travel, so we can actually stand up and give him a hug. Brother Michael, he just came from. Sorry.
Where are they getting that energy? Should they just be destroyed, or is just Allah giving them time, respite?
Where are they getting the energy to do those acts of worship? Yes, actually, a test. هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. Shall we not tell you of the losers? No, I'm doing it for the rest of the people. You know. Should we not tell you of the utmost losers, or those whose work in the life of this world went into vain or vanished while they were thinking that they were doing well? So it is istidraj. It is Allah is just because they are not listening. Because it is not up to you to decide what you want to do. It is to comply. It is not, some people sort of do it with Allah like this, Okay, here's what you gave me. Okay, and now I'm going to do this. I'm going to overlook that. I'm not really convinced of that. because sometimes some things are controversial. So he decides that he's not convinced because it's too hard. So I'm not going to be convinced because it's too hard. So I'm not going to even listen, because if it ended up to be really obligatory, I'm going to still not do it because it's just too hard. Once you have done that, that is sort of that is a huge compromise of submission, compliance, to conform, to submit, to comply, to bow. So, and so they decide that I like to go to Hajj. I'm going to go to Hajj every other year. Fasting also is not too bad. It's good and it keeps you in shape. So I'm going to fast twice a week. And then to memorize the Quran, I can really sort of show it off every now and every here and there, and just I'll look very educated because I memorize the Quran and stuff. And then he memorizes the Quran, and then he goes to Hajj every other year, and then he's fasting 2 days a week. But then he's not doing what Allah wanted him to do, which is to comply, to submit. Because if he submitted, then he would not be picking and choosing. He would be complying across the board. So Allah would let him tire himself out in fasting and Hajj and, yeah. So they just keep on doing whatever it is that they do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاعِمَةٌ لِسَعْيِهَا رَاضِيَةٌ وَجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة. عاملة ناصبة. عاملة means what? Means working. ناصبة means tired of work. So the Mufassirun said that عاملة ناصبة, it is actually not working in wickedness or evil or anything. It is not doing acts of wickedness or evil. They actually doing acts of goodness to the point of, again, tired or tiredness, nasiba, which is tired. But those acts were not truly for Allah. Had they been truly for Allah, you would have complied with all the rest. Even if you did not comply with one, it would be momentary weakness, it will be transient failure, and then you rebound from it. But if it is basically a matter of picking and choosing and defining your comfort zone within the religion, so this is where I will excel, this is where I will slack, this is where I don't believe in this because even if I did, it's just too hard to uphold. That sort of approach to the religion is an approach of one who did not comply in the first place, who has no submission, who has no Islam, true Islam.
It is different to fear about your capacity. It's different, two different.
It's different to do what?
Like to fear about your capacity, like to have that taqwa to your capacity, like what you can do, not having that intention of picking and choosing.
No, that is different from failing because of your sort of limitations, because of your ignorance, even because of your lack of taqwa. But those failures will be more or less across the board. Even if they vary, they will vary based on your personal weaknesses. It is not that you have made up your mind. It's not that you have decided for yourself that this is what I will do, and this is, so I'm gonna steal and embezzle, bribe and do all forms of corruption and deal with riba and do all forms of corruption in my transactions, but I will go to Hajj every other year, and that should wipe off all the rest. Or periodically, I'm cleaning the mess. And it doesn't clean the mess, because that is predetermined ma'asiyah. It's predetermined defiance.
Is it possible for those kind of people that pick and choose to feel connection or peace or happiness or tranquil, or not?
There is a reward for the acts of worship themselves. So the act of worship itself may give you the feeling of happiness. So there is, even when you do some of those acts of worship, but you don't have really true submission, spiritual realization, you're doing them out of the second stage of faith, the persuasion, mental conviction. You know that this is, Islam is supreme, or Islam is the right religion. You're afraid of the hellfire. You aspire for paradise. You figure, I should really do these things. But there is no spiritual realization. There is no connection. It's all dry faith. It's not moist. It's not green. It does not come to fruition. It has not come to fruition yet. So you can get some transient reward. That is not even limited to Muslims only. If you're not Muslim and you stand up in prayer for the whole night, you will feel better in the morning. You'll feel content, you'll feel satisfied, you'll feel empowered. Meditation per se has an effect on people whether they are Muslim or not. But then the ultimate success is when this is truly for Allah and out of complete submission, not out of a trade-off. I'm just going to do this so that, I save myself from the hellfire and get into paradise. Until you have you have completed the triangle, which is fear, hope, and love. Fear of the punishment, hope in the reward, and love of Allah, which should be the predominant feeling. Once you have completed this triangle, to where it should be, then you have achieved the third. You cannot complete this triangle without being in the third category, third layer of faithful people. Because if you have faith through association, you're not there at all. You're just, you're enjoying the ride with the rest of your comrades here on the bus. And faith through persuasion, where it is trade-off, that is fear and hope. It is sort of calculated worship. And some people say, well, I'll do this, but I'm not going to do that. It's just like, this will get me through. This will I will be able to make it across the hellfire and get into paradise. So he would not put in any extra effort, because there is no love. So it's basically, fear and hope alone. You will not be able to have the fear, hope, love, unless you reach the third stage, which is the spiritual realization and spiritual connection, where it is not only dry conviction, but the sweetness of faith. You taste the sweetness of faith.
A lot of times you'll hear people say, they'll kind of take up permission from Allah by saying, Allah doesn't make the religion hard for us, so we use that to justify leaving certain things. So how do you counter that, or see yourself in somebody saying, it happens a lot.
Well, Allah Himself says, نَبِّئْ عِبَادِي أَنِّي أَنَا الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ وَأَنَّ عَذَابِي هُوَ الْعَذَابُ الْأَلِيمُ. inform my servants that I am Al-Ghafur Al-Rahim, the most forgiving, the most merciful, وَأَنَّ عَذَابِي وَالْعَذَابُ الْأَلِيمُ, and that my torment is a severe one, a severe torment. So if you want to split the statement and do away with half of it, then that shows, how biased you are in your understanding. At the end of the day, you can't deceive Allah. I mean, a lot of people can make a lot of nice arguments and throw arguments at you left and right and so on, and you can never catch them. You can never, because basically they use illogical arguments, and they don't, they neither have the spirituality that will prevent them from falsehood, nor do they have the logic that will prevent them from illogical arguments. So discussing any matter with them is so painful, and it is so aggravating. What do? Basically, you convey the message to the best of your ability. Keep your cool, convey the message. Don't think. ما أنت عليهم بمسيطر. You are not a controller over them. You do not have control over them. إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء. You do not guide whomever you please, but Allah guides whomever He pleases. You know this at the end of the day. فلعلك باقع عن نفسك ألا يكونوا مؤمنين إن نشأ ننزل عليهم من السماء آية فظلت أعناقهم لها خاضعين. You're about to destroy yourself that they are not accepting faith. Had we wished, we would have shown them a sign that would make their necks bend down in complete submission forever. So Allah did not do that. Allah has a purpose in making this a true test. If He shows them the sign, that's not a true test. But the true test is to keep those signs and to really test their faith. So basically, for people like this, you just tell them that Allah's torment also is great. And there are so many attributes of forgiveness and compassion and love and so on. And there are so many other attributes of might and greatness, the compeller, Jabbar, Aziz, the mighty, So one should, not be biased. Because if you deceive yourself and you deceive a couple of people around you, that's not going to benefit you at the end. But it is important that you don't get frustrated, because وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah said, and the majority of the people, even if you are keen, will not be believers, or are not believers, even if you are keen. Therefore, we have to deal with a reality where the majority of the people will not be believers, are not believers. But it is important also that while we are aware of all of this, that we don't think that we are the saved ones and they're the destroyed ones. That we're as afraid of being, we should be more afraid for ourselves than we are afraid for them. Because we don't have guarantees that we are saved. We don't have guarantees that our work is actually devoted, is for His sake. So we should not act from a position of someone who's granted admission to paradise, and now I'm calling upon you to join me. I'm still here with you on the road, but I see that, the destination is from here. So I'm trying to point it out to you. I may point it out to you, and you may make it to that destination, and I may fail at the end. So if you have that attitude, you will not fall into arrogance or pride. Yeah.
So my question, if someone who's praying 5 times a day, doing Hajj and fasting, is still committing any type of sin, so that's the same having the whole kind of
So he's committing the same type of sin. We're not saying that someone like this is a kafir. For sure, we know what kufr is and what iman is, and sins do not lead into kufr until you become kafir, until they cause you to be kafir. Sins are not synonymous with kufr, but could they lead to? Yeah, they are the branches of kufr. They lead to kufr, but they're not synonymous with kufr, no matter how grave those sins are. In fact, someone just sent me a question today, which was quite an interesting question, because she has 4 kids, and her first daughter ran away with a non-Muslim woman, and she married her, and she was actually able to get a child through IVF. So she's raising the child with her non-Muslim, whatever that would be. Huh? Partner, yes. Thank you. See, the language is always flexible. It can actually... Anyway. And yet she still prays and fasts. And she actually pays zakah. And she went with them to Hajj. Her third daughter ran away with a non-Muslim man, but she left Islam. Yet she is married to that man now, and they're having a happy family. And the mother says that he's a caring man. So he's taking good care of her. She's actually going to college. She is sort of got her life together. So the father wants to exclude them from inheritance. And the question did not ask that it not be published. Certainly there are no names attached, and they did not require that the answer would not be published, because if they did, we do not publish it, and then we will not even mention it. So the father wants to exclude them from inheritance. So she was asking me about the fairness or lack thereof. The fairness of that, or the lack of fairness. So, what would your answer be? The third one is actually excluded from inheritance. She ran away with a non-Muslim man, and she married him, and she's getting her life together, and she's going to college, happily married, but she left Islam. Now the first one, who is, so the first one did not really leave Islam, did not say I left Islam. So she prays, she fasts, she pays zakat, she went with them to Hajj. She went to Hajj with her parents. So you have to say that unless she does this, unless she defies the rules of Islam regarding this matter, this issue, or rejects them, or rejects that she is addressed by them, she is still entitled to inheritance, because she is still Muslim. So the sin, no matter how great it is not synonymous with disbelief. So what you're saying is they pray and fast and they commit a certain sin on consistent basis. They should continue to pray and fast because prayers and fasting will hopefully overcome that weakness in their faith, will improve their faith. But they should say to themselves, why is it not working? Why is praying and fasting not working? Why are praying and fasting not working? They must not be doing it right. And if they do it right, then Allah only says the truth. إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. Most certainly, a salah forbids one from fahsha, which is lewdness or disgraceful acts, and munkar, evil, all evil. So if it is not doing it for him, then he has to ask himself, why is it not doing it for me? So it is not working, or it's not working enough to improve the driving force, to increase his faith, which is the driving force. And that driving force is the power that will enable him to do that which is good and to abstain from or refrain from that which is bad. Basically, whenever you are in trouble, in terms of shortcomings or sinning, whenever you are in trouble, just understand that there is lack of driving force. There is lack of faith. And then look for ways to improve that, and just make sure that whatever it is that you're doing is actually being done correctly and being done for Allah. Yeah, with correct intentions.
Questions back to the first one, the story you said. Is still she considered to be a Muslim?
You do not want her to be a Muslim. What's different between this and fornication? I mean, it is so big for us, and it is big. It is big. But we have to understand that at the end of the day, does it belong to sins or shirk? Is it a sin or an act of shirk or disbelief or kufr? If it belongs to sins, then it is a sin. Is it an enormity? Absolutely. Kabira. Yeah, absolutely. But do kaba'ir make you kafir? Absolutely not. I understand the reason why you want it to be something. But it is still a sin. It belongs to the category of sins. And we have to really accustom ourselves to draw in the line between sin and disbelief, because it is not up to us, no matter how repulsed you are by a certain behavior or a certain action, it is not up to me to decide, well, this is disbelief or this is kufr. If it is not kufr, it is not kufr. And it is not up to me to decide where it belongs, because Allah made that clear.
Alhamdulillah, I learned between, I thought maybe it's kufr too, but you very clarified there. Kufr is different than sin is different.
Yeah.
When a person committing a sin is a sin. It's a major sin, minor sin, but it still is a sin. The kufr is kufr to you. So alhamdulillah, it's clarified, but I never thought of it.
Yeah, and no matter how big the sin is, it's of a different kind, different category, different kind. That does not mean that sins do not lead to kufr. they could lead to kufr. Yeah, but they are not synonymous with kufr. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك.